I'm Paul Cayley. I was born in Lindsay here in November the 27th, 1931. I have lived out on the Little Britain Road all my life. My grandfather settled out in Westhops. The Cayleys have been there ever since.
Hello there, my name is Gerard Curtin and I've resided in this area all my life on a farm just west of Lindsay. I always heard that they say young men go west, go west. Well, I only moved up one concession road from the time I was born until today, so that was as far west as I got.
My name's Hartley Deighton. I come to Lindsay in the early 60s. I was born in 36 and I was here a year or two till I was asked to join by Joe Murphy to join the Knights of Columbus.
My name's Mike Hannon. I'm 66 years old. I've been born and raised in Lindsay my entire life. The Hannons came to Lindsay in 1927. My grandfather was working for F.W. Woolworths Company, and he was transferred in from Stratford. And the first store was down where the Canada building is there now on Kent Street, the Resource Center. And he was there for a while, and then they moved across the street to a brand new store where Ward's Lawyers is established now.
My name is Paul Skipworth. Most people just call me Skip. And I was born here in 1932.
Hi, I'm Marg Wansborough. I have been a Lindsayite for many, many years. I was born here in 1938 at the Ross Memorial Hospital. It's been quite a trip. I've been to different places, lived in different places over the years, but I am now back again in Lindsay and enjoying it. I'm living on the property that my parents had bought shortly after the Second World War, down on Sturgeon Lake at Kennedy Bay. Both my grandparents, all my grandparents, the four of them, were all Lindsayites. But had come from different countries, of course, mainly Ireland.
We arrived from Ireland in 1847 and landed out in Westhops and have been there ever since. I've been a member of the St. Mary's Church, was baptized here, received all the sacraments, but the last one, and I guess that's not too far away, but anyway.
I've been a parishioner at St. Mary's for the last 18 years. I was baptized here back in 1939. I guess that's before the war broke out.
I was christened in 1932 as well. And I was an altar boy for 13 years, and I sang in the choir for 57 years.
The church, especially I remember the wall between the church and in front of the convent. That was a lot of conversation about the tearing down of that wall. It happened and time marches on. I understand that the top of the St. Joseph's Academy is out there between Omemee and Rayborough on the left-hand side of the road. It might be worth having a look at to remember the old times.
I went to this private girls' school run by St. Joseph Sisters, previously run by the sisters from Toronto. I did all my schooling was there, my grade school, high school. We had a wonderful time, lots of fun. We always knew when the nuns were coming because you'd hear the rosary beads clicking or the creaking of the floors. That was a very interesting part. But we did have a good time. And one room there was a clock, and one rascal of a girl, she'd always get the clock booming and booming when one nun in particular came into the room. And I was embarrassed by it because I didn't think she should do that. But anyway, because I liked the sister, and she was quite an artist, and she helped me out in my sort of art era. With the choir, the school choir, we all had to belong to the choir. And of course that involved Latin, and we had to learn Latin. But if you were singing it, you could just sort of sing along, and you didn't matter whether you were saying the right words or not. We happened to get through it all, and we had students bussed in or driven in, but the ones that lived in Lindsay had to participate in morning mass, which was at 8 o'clock. And we would have to be at the church to sing the hymns, and also for the funeral masses, of course, or any other occasions that took place, such as confirmations or First Communion. We were involved in the singing. And we did one time have our singing recorded, and a record was made of it, and we were all very proud of that. And the teacher was Sister Teresa Eileen, and she was a bounteous sister, loved to eat, and the poor lady ended up with diabetes, and I felt so sorry for her. And I stayed at the convent a couple of nights, one time when my parents were going away, and lived in the dormitories and that had sheets strung up between each bed, and the nun would come along and check you out at night and make sure that you were all right. But the meals there were delicious. We had a Sister Geraldine who could bake anything, and she used to make what we called nuns' buns, and they were so good, and they seemed to peel out of her just like a hen with eggs. Anytime you'd go there, there would be buns for us to eat.
Kinsman Band, it goes way back to 1950 something, and I was mixed up with the band for about 20 years. I was a drum major for 5 years, and it was a great experience for children. At that time, there was no music in the schools. The only band was the Cavaliers and the Kinsmen. So the kids got the chance. They played at the World's Fair in New York. They played in Disney World. They got a chance to travel all around and meet a lot of people. And when we played in Disney World down in Florida, they had to play the same thing all day long. I forget what the name of this, but the kids were all tired of playing the same song. But that was a great experience for kids. And it was Mr. Banks was the bandmaster for, I guess, 20-some years. He was just a fantastic teacher. And there was Jack Clark, who was a regimental sergeant major. He was a drum major for years, and he just acted like a drum major, but when the play was over, he'd be playing euchre with them. Bob Ashmore and Herb Simpson were the chaperones, and we were in Knoxville, and they were carrying bags of beer across the intersection, and the bag broke. And Herb could whistle like a policeman. He stopped on all the traffic while Bob picked up all the beer. And the next time we flew out, and I took a gallbladder attack out there, and I was kind of out of commission for a couple of days, but Dr. Matheson, he was the doctor, and he said, when you get back to Lindsay, he said, you get your gallbladder out. So I got back to Lindsay, but I didn't get my gallbladder out. So at Christmas time, I had another gallbladder attack, and who was on duty that night was Dr. Matheson. He said, what did I tell you? Then one time we were going to Knoxville, and I took a gallbladder attack at breakfast time, and they took me to the hospital, and he said, you're having a heart attack. I said, no, I'm not. I'm having a gallbladder attack. So someone stayed behind and drove me to Knoxville, and they stayed at the most beautiful lodges, had the most beautiful food, and I'm eating there for 4 days eating toast and tea.
But the best memory I have is me being a baby boomer. And I was born raised here right in Pumpkin Hollow. I grew up in the corner of Russell and Simcoe Street, and there was a lot of kids around. And we spent the whole winter down at the bottom of what we call the bottom of the hill where Guy Mills Suites are there now, the condo building. And we were there summer and winter. We'd play hockey all winter, and then ball in the summer. Or before that, you were tobogganing on the hill itself. But it was a great time to be. All these kids would get together. We were responsible for the work of the rink. We'd be shoveling the rink. We'd flood the rink, and it was a real great time. 2 priests really helped out, and the first one was Father Ray Hart, who he got us even hockey boards. He built 2 rinks, one for skating and the other one for hockey. He got boards for us. It was just, my God, we thought we were at Maple Leaf Gardens. We just couldn't believe our luck to have all this. And the other priest who really helped out big time was Father Joe Moran. Father Joe Moran, he was great for the youth. spent a lot of time with us. He's quite a hockey player himself, as was Father Hart. They were both great hockey players, and they would come down and play with us.
The Knights of Columbus put on the Young Canada Night, which was a hockey at the arena, and we seen a lot of kids enjoy that night, and we'd always make there'd be presentations after that.
I always wanted to live in Pumpkin Hollow, but my mother, and we lived on Glenelg Street East at 5, and my mother said we never could live in Pumpkin Hollow. I guess it was considered not a very good place, kind of derelict. But we used to go down there. It was the rectory, and our church was in that area, so it couldn't have been too bad. But we used to sleigh down the Pumpkin Hollow hill behind the rectory, and we'd pump water from the well, and it would just be glare ice, and you'd just go flying down there. A lot of us would bring cardboard, and we'd sit on the cardboard, and away we go. One night, there was this kind of a bully fella at the hill, and he decided to chase me. And so I just took off, and I ran into St. Mary's Church, crawled under a pew, and waited till he was gone. He came into the church, and so I waited there, and when I got home, I thought, I'll never tell my mother because she'll never let me go back to the hill.
Lindsay was a real railroad town. One time there was maybe 65 trains a day through Lindsay. I lived 3 houses around the tracks, and the trains ran 24 hours a day, and you never even heard them, never even bothered. And at Victoria Avenue in Kent, you might be stopped there for 5 or 10 minutes while trains shunted back and forth, but no one seemed to lose patience. That's just part of living here. And my dad worked on the railroad. He was an express driver. He drove a horse, a perch-on horse, dapple gray, we called him Claude. And when I was probably 5 or 6, I'd go around with my dad in the summertime to all the factories picking up stuff, and there was, I think, 24 factories in Lindsay at that time. And Horns Willow Mill had a particular smell. The Knitters had a smell. Allenberry's over in King Street, it had a different smell again. So I'd drive around on this big horse, and in the wintertime on a sleigh, and the horse would be put into the Ozzie Dagenaw's livery stable in behind where Crest Hardware was. And that's where they'd go in there at lunchtime, and the dad would put me on the top of the big horse, and I'd drive the horse into the stable. And we used to have a crossing guard at corner of Lindsay and Durham, and there was Mr. Heels and Mr. Bovey and Mr. Jordan. They worked 8-hour shifts, and there was a little building there. We called it the Ducat, and that's where they would stay in between trains. And there was a stove in there, and the wintertime you go in there, you get big bread in there. It was that warm. And I delivered the Globe Mail, and the Globe Mail would be dropped off at this Ducat, and Mr. Hales or whoever was there would get the papers all ready for me, and then I delivered the Globe Mail. And I used to deliver to the Kent Hotel, and the Central Hotel, and the Legion. And when I go to collect on Saturday, my mother would say, now don't you stay in there too long, you just get the money and get out of there. I used to like the Legion on Saturday mornings. You go down there early. Friday nights, there'd be a lot of guys who might have been drinking. They'd lose their change beyond the ground. And I'd go down there on Saturday morning, maybe I'd get $1.30 or 85 cents. And I said, I'm really making money here.
My grandfather Tangney was in the furniture business, but also in the funeral business. And I do recall we, of course, bought caskets, had caskets at the store for the people that died. I remember going out to the cemetery, checking graves with my dad, and he would say, don't step on the places where the bodies are, because he said you could sink in and get right into the casket that was there. I guess I don't know, maybe were not too stable. He had a store on the main street in Lindsay from 1890 to, I don't know what the date was when the store closed, but anyway, it has a lot of memories. I remember going down there having to dust the furniture on the Saturday or after the people had left the store. It It was a grand experience. I know my dad, when they had the store during the war and during the Depression, they used to frame pictures to make money. That's how they survived. And Dad used to carry things on a sleigh with his dog pulling it. That would be furniture. That's how they got the furniture around.
But Horn's Woolen Mill sold stuff all over, I think all over the world. Then they closed up, and it's an apartment house now. The Knitters is closed up. McRae's are closed up. Sylvester's is closed. Sylvester's was a big business back at the turn of the century with farm implements.
What I wanted to speak to you about is the Knights of Columbus that came to Lindsay. And the year that they came was in 1906, and they became the 9th council to receive a charter in the province of Ontario. The first meetings were held in the parish hall here in Lindsay in 1918, when a home association of the Knights of Columbus was formed and acquired a building block at the foot of Kent Street in downtown Lindsay, where the emblem of the order was prominently displayed as you came down Kent Street. This location was the hub of the Knights' activity until 1995, when the property was sold and the former IOF Hall, the fraternal hall of the IOF on William Street South, was purchased. It is here that the Knights have called home until the present time, and I'm recording this from a letter that was written in 2009. Over the years, the KFC Council 1124 has contributed substantially donations to our local community and parish. Presently, the membership is 125 members and are actively involved in promoting pro-life and continue financially supporting parish needs, and etc., with the church, restoration, the school, youth groups, and many other charitable organizations.
And later on, we started into Santa Claus would call up youngsters, to see and they were selected people that unfortunate young people in town, and we'd ask them what Santa Claus could bring them, and I never realized how fortunate our family was, my family, and listening to some of those youngsters tell it the way it was, and it was hard to even understand then what they had to go through, which we all took for granted. And that was one eye-opener that I'll never forget.
In 2009, the Knights of Columbus Council 1124 here in Lindsay provided financial support for bus trips to the Martyr Shrine.
We've also taken kids to the ball games when the Blue Jays first started up, and on the way up we gave each child $6, and we stopped at Tim Hortons, and each member had 2 or 3 or 4 young lads to look after. And one of the youngsters that I was looking after, he came in and he looked all around in the building, and I said, have you ever been in here? He says, no, I've never been in a Tim Hortons. And I thought once again how fortunate we were. Didn't realize how many young children were unfortunate enough not to see everything that was available for them. But it was a nice feeling to know that you give something to somebody that never experienced, which we all took for granted.
Cooked and served the diocesan secretaries' luncheon held in Lindsay, and they've organized and operate 2 giant yard sales with proceeds to St. Mary's Restoration and Repair Fund. And that particular yard sale event has been carried on up until the present day. And they've cooked and served annual dinner for the Blind Association over all the years, and sold Keep Christ in Christmas buttons with proceeds to the Priest's Retirement Fund in the Diocese of Peterborough. We've offered monthly Mass for vocations for all our deceased members, and they used to run the bi-weekly bingo at the local bingo hall over quite a number of years. And they also participated in the annual Brotherhood dinner that includes members of the Masons, the IOF, the Moose, and the Orange Lodge in this area that was started and has been going on for quite a number of years.
A lot of happenings other than my first communion, and I married a girl that was 5 days younger than me, Kathleen Connolly, and she lived here and went to the convent, and actually she was a business person here in Lindsay. She worked at the CIBC for years, and then she took over her dad's Connolly House broker, I believe from 75 to 91. I worked at ABEX for 39 and a half years, from 53, I believe.
Personally, I worked for A&P Food Stores as well. I was there for 18 years, and then I became a volunteer firefighter. The Lindsay Ops Fire Department at that time, they hired from the volunteers. So I was fortunate enough to get a job as a permanent firefighter, full-time firefighter. And I rode truck for 10 years on the floor. And in the last 15, I went into fire prevention. And I found that very fulfilling. Going into a building and the inspection, making it more fire safe, I found that very rewarding.
I can remember when the police didn't have a car. They used to use a lawnmower or a wheelbarrow to take the prisoners. They got a car, the first car in 1942. And there were 6 policemen on duty then. And the fire department, that was a little different too. I used to go up there and play cards at night, but you're not allowed to do that now. And the firemen used to ride up in the back of a fire truck. They just hang on for dear life. Now they have all caps.
My grandfather, Blanchard, was a doctor, and he was sort of the official doctor for the area. He had horses where he would go out into the country in the winter, and as my mother said, she made sure that the stove was heated up so that once the baby was born, it was just popped into the oven and to keep it warm. And she called this the confinement. I don't know whether it was because you were pregnant or what that you were confined, but anyway, she and my mother was a nurse at the Ross Memorial Hospital, and she always went out with her father to assist, and I guess that's what got her going, and she went into the nursing at the Ross Memorial Hospital. She was pretty young because Dr. Collison said to my mother, Dr. Collison, who was a wonderful doctor here in Lindsay, he called my mother Alice in Wonderland. Her name was Alice, and of course she seemed so young. I guess he couldn't believe it. But my grandmother Blanchard, she was definitely Irish, wanted to be through and through, but there was a little bit of English in her, I know for sure. She could play the piano by ear, and it was just amazing. She could hear anything on the radio, and she'd sit at the piano and just pedal away, and we'd all be singing, and it was great. And then Dad would make an eggnog for her health and put a little bit of rye in it to pepper up for the walk home or the drive home, so she would sleep, was what my father said.
I worked for 13 years at the A&P, and that's when the heyday of the 12th of July parades. And during the parade, the store would kind of close up, and we'd all go over to get Bass's Ale, and we'd all drink Bass's Ale during the parade. Then we'd open up for business again. People used to get some good bargains. And then I worked for 23 years for National Grocers, and then I retired. I worked for Deneur Tours for 10 years. And one of the most learning experience was working for Deneur Tours. You meet all kinds of people. I like people. If you didn't like people, it'd be a heck of a job. But I love people. So I traveled from one end of Canada to the other in some 40 different states. And but that was a wonderful, wonderful experience. And I got to go to the Bahamas, the Caribbean, and Hawaii. And I was being paid to do this. So that was a pretty good deal.
Pumpkin Hollow. There, the dog catcher lived there, and he had a great big, we thought it was a nice house, but it was just a barn, no heat, nothing, mud floor, cold, snow in it, and dogs galore, plus puppies, you could imagine, with all the different dogs being there. But my sister chose a hound, and we took it home, and we had it, the hound for a few years. It ate and grew and ate and grew.
But another fellow had a store over in Queen Street, Barney O'Neill. Barney had a big sign, "We doze but never close." And this is an era before Becker's and Max. Barney was the biggest milk customer that Silverwoods had. Saturday and Sunday, there'd be people lined up getting milk at Barney's. He used to be known as the unofficial mayor of the East Ward. Then his sister Marg, she had a little hot dog stand on Queen Street, just up from Western Motors.
I can't really contribute a lot more at this time off the top of my head. My memory's not as good as it used to be. So, thank you very much.
That is my recollection of the Knights of Columbus of Lindsay, and thank you very much.
I guess that's about brings it up to my experience as being in the Knights of Columbus and helping some of the people out. And I don't know whether it's gotten any better since then, but I don't suppose it's gotten any worse. Thank you.
So it's been a good go. I'm the oldest of 7 kids here, and we had a lot of fun, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. It's been a great time to grow up in.
What else are we talking about?
What else do you want me to talk about?